lifestyle expert,
Yvette Rios.
Yvette Rios.
La experta en estilo y vida, Yvette Rios.
Hack attack specialist, Yvette Rios.
Lifestyle expert, Yvette Rios.
How much time is this going to take?
Okay, hold on.
That is
Okay, Mickey, go ahead.
Hola, soy Yvette Rios y aquí les tengo unos postres únicos que nos hacen sentir un amor muy familiar.
If one piece of candy gets past you and into that packing room unwrapped, you're fired. Yes, ma'am? Let her roll!
Here we go.
When I change a home for the homeowners, it's fantastic.
We're gonna love it.
Why? They put their faith in me as a design. I was about to get to you if you could just hold on.
I can't.
Hey, look what we just did.
Isn't like in unison?
Yeah. I think we're probably spending way too much time together. Look at that. That looks just like you, except way, way more intelligent. Wow. It's all kind of pulled together. I'm wondering why I'm here so far.
I'm wondering what I'm doing here also.
Well, I'm always wondering what you're doing here.
Oh, that's not nice.
House Beautiful contributor and interior designer, Libby Langdon.
I'm Libby Langdon. Today we're in a basement in the Forgotten Foyer. Gorgeous seaside location. We're gonna transform a living space that definitely needs to move away from tiny tot toys to a totally cool hangout space. Paint is one of the most inexpensive and amazing ways to completely transform your room. When we started this morning, all we had was a room with a view. It's now the fun room.
Being that this is my first time doing this, it's go big or go home.
Oh, geez.
Okay.
So I think we should actually draw on the walls. For sake of time, you know, I'm gonna be the little Vanna Black over here, and I'm gonna show you what the
this is the
completed piece looks like, okay? All right.
Please welcome Mikhail.
You ready?
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our fabulous panel.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Yay.
We're here.
Yay.
This is so super exciting. Thank you so much for being here. It matters to all of us that all of you took time out of what we know is a crazy busy market. Are you guys having a good time?
Yay.
Yes. I'm loving market. But thank you all for being with us today. I'm so thrilled to be amongst such fabulous designers, and we've all chosen the path of television to elevate our brand. So let's dive right into it. Make sure that you guys keep questions because we're going to do like a whole Q&A situation at the end. And thank you all for being with us. So the first question I wanted to ask everybody, and I want to start with you, Hillary. How did you get into television?
So by chance that there's nothing to learn by this except being in the right place at the right time. Very dear friend of mine in Toronto is a casting agent, and she said that this show has come up and you should go. And I said, don't be stupid. And I want you to remember this was 12 years ago before really there were a lot of these design shows. Anyway, she basically kidnapped me, took me there, and ta-da. The real question is, what did I expect out of it? Nothing. I just thought it was fun. I didn't expect it to be going on for 12 years, so that's a whole different discussion.
Okay, Mikhail, how did you get started?
Well, I wasn't so lucky. I wish somebody had done the same thing for me. But I actually started off on HGTV on a design show called Design Star on HGTV. So I auditioned. There were about 2,000 of us in New York.
2,000?
In that line alone, there were over 2,000 people. Everybody had their portfolio, and you know, you had to hope for the best. And they ended up choosing 2 people from New York, and hey, that's how it started.
Terrific. Fantastic. What about you, Libby?
I actually had a totally different path. I started out in movies and television. I used to do soap operas and voiceovers and TV commercials. And so that was really where I started. And when I decided to sort of move away from doing movies, I went to my agent at the time and I said, you know, I think I want to host some kind of cooking show. I like all this lifestyle programming that's starting to happen. And my agent said, yeah, if you want to do a cooking show, you kind of have to have a restaurant or a cookbook. And I was like, drats, I don't have either one. And so they said if you wanted to audition for a design show, you know, you would probably be a great host for that. And so I ended up auditioning for Trading Spaces as the host, and I didn't get it, but the production company called me back about 3 months later, and they were doing a show on Fox called Design Invasion. And so I auditioned for that, and I got it. And so I had never really been an interior designer. I grew up here in High Point. My mom was a designer. My dad was in textiles. And I went to fashion design school, but didn't have a background in interior design. So that was kind of... TV kind of started me in interior design, ironically. So I came to it from a totally different point of view.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I actually did have a design build business in Toronto. So I had a design studio and a design build where I was, you know, already, really, when I think about it, it was the show. I was already going headbutting with GCs who wouldn't do what I wanted, and doing me, it can't be done, and all of that stuff. Oh, yes, and I always won, by the way. I was, even then, it was like, it can be done. But so that's how they found me. So mine was a much more logical route. I love your roundabout thing, because that's a great story.
Yeah.
I have a really fun story that I want to share with you guys. So I was working for a designer as her design assistant. I went to Parsons, got my certificate program in interior design. But what was so funny is we worked out of her home, but she refused to talk to me. It was weird. Oh. And so she would IM me. This is the time of like AOL IM, and she would IM me, and we'd get pass notes to each other that way. And I worked for her for a few years. She had a fabulous show on a network called Fine Living. And then one day, out of the blue, this casting agency asked her if she wanted to do another show. I IM'd her, are you interested? She wrote, absolutely not, I've got my own show. And as I was gonna pick up the phone and say like, I'm sorry, she's not interested, I thought, I'm interested.
Oh, I love it.
I did.
There, the brass ring, and you grabbed it.
So I called back and I said, she's not interested, but her assistant is fabulous. And her name is Yvette Rios.
I love it.
And you should reach out to her and see if it's a good fit. So they called me. I didn't get that job, but the same with you. The production company came back around when they had another show.
Right.
So it's okay to, you know, suggest yourself.
Absolutely.
So go
Be
ahead.
your own agent.
Be your own agent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how have you guys felt that TV has helped you kind of refine and hone your brand? Like, how do you think it's helped you, I guess, in general with creating your brand? Go ahead, Libby.
I mean, for me, I think what it's done is it's allowed me to reach the end user. It's allowed me to reach the consumer, the person that's actually out there looking for an interior designer, buying, you know, products that I might be designing. And I think also in this day and age of social media, the way we can take clips and little things like that and pop them on Instagram, pop them on Facebook or whatever, it's what my, you know, social media girl says. She calls them snackable. So it's just little bits that you can put out there. And I think also people now are so visually stimulated that anything with TV, moving image, that kind of thing really has helped build the brand. But it's like anything else. It works if you work it. So, you know, it doesn't just magically start to build your brand. You've got to really know what you want to do, and I think set goals on how you want to grow your business and move things forward. And then that gives you the sort of game plan on how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would kind of agree with that. I'd say television has kind of opened up my network in terms of the opportunities for the clients that I'm now able to draw in. I will say TV is a tricky thing, a lot of times contingent upon the subject matter that I'm speaking on. If I'm doing a high-end program, such as something like LXTV does a show, I don't know, have you guys seen Open House? It's kind of like Lifestyle and the Rich and Famous. Shows like that have opened up a platform because I've gotten calls to do larger properties. And so television has just kind of opened up my world, especially as someone who came from a reality-based program. I didn't have initially, like, you know, that large pool of clients. And so television just kind of catapulted me. You know, the very first person I got to work with because of reality was the comedian Steve Harvey. And so from there, it just kind of spiraled. So TV is like my best friend right now.
And Hillary, you had a very different experience, right?
I have a very different experience. So my design business in Toronto prior to doing the show was all high-end. And once I started doing the show, which as anyone, have you all do you know the show Love It or List It?
Love it.
Okay. Well, you also know that I have ridiculous budgets. So the business that I had, which I managed to keep going in parallel with the show while we were filming in Toronto, logistically it was easier, and I could say, okay, that's the show and this is real life. Those have blurred now, and it's actually really been impossible for me to be able to do the show for a combination of reasons while also having private clients. So straight away, I've really not been able to do that because I'm far too OCD to not be on site and to be watching every step of the design process. And every time I thought I could do that, something would go wrong that shouldn't have. It was horrible. So I've had to let that part go because of the show. So I have no high-end clients whatsoever. But equally, the clients that did come after me had tiny budgets, and they actually thought that I could work these miracles, which I cannot do in real life without a team and everything that goes with a show to support that. It can't be done in real life, and I don't want to do it in real life because it's a huge amount of work. So I'm now starting and launching my own product line, and that's where the show has been phenomenal. Because without even realizing it, I've been showcasing my design aesthetic and what I can do for 12 years. And so I already have a base that's built in that wants to know what I have and actually trusts what I can bring to the market. So thank you, Love It or List It. That's the payoff for me.
Do all of you have an interest in being on television? Pretty much everybody? Have some of you done television already? Okay, cool. What advice do we have for those folks out there that want to try their hand at television?
What I would say is, you know, these days, of course, we've all been on TV and national network TV, but at this point, there are more people between the ages of 18 and 35 that watch YouTube than ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox together.
Wow.
So what I always recommend to people is you must start your own YouTube channel. You must start having somebody video you. And it doesn't have to be professional. It can be on your iPhone. It can be on your, you know, your whatever phone, tablet you have. And when a lot of people say, oh, well, I get nervous, I'm scared to be on video, as designers, if you have someone videoing you through a space you've designed, you will be shocked at how easy it is to take somebody through because you know why you did what you did in that design. You know why you chose that blue fabric and this rug and these window treatments and that lamp. And so it's much easier, but it just takes practice. The other thing is, it's really important to get video up on your website. If you don't have video on your website, you're really missing out. It lets people see that you're approachable. It lets them see what your personality is. And so I think YouTube is a huge avenue for everybody to get on there. And then the other thing is, it lets you start to build, it lets you build content that if you do at some point want to audition for a show that's on television, you can send people to your YouTube channel. So for me, I think that's the easiest way to do it. And if a 7-year-old kid can make a video and put it on YouTube, you can.
So true.
So, yeah.
And I think that's smart about the content because Yvette and I talk a lot about finding your special sauce. You know, each one of us up here represents something different. We all have a different brand. And I think that's the great thing about television. You know, producers are always going to be looking for something different. But once you put that content together, you know, there are other avenues for television. It just doesn't have to be HGTV or a national show. You can try your local shows. I feel like that is the easiest way to break into television. So, you know, your Good Day Charlotte or wherever, Great Day Atlanta, you know, me and Yvette were talking the other day, you know, just the power of social media. And if you try to source the producer as opposed to the executive producer who's just like bogged down with so many things, they don't have time to look at emails. But try to find, you know, that associate producer who's linked to the segments that you're interested in pitching in, and go local, because local is the easiest way to get your foot into the door, and they're going to be more apt to work with you without you having that much experience.
All right, so I would say the first question you have to ask yourselves is why? Why, as designers, do you want to be on television? So the obvious answer is you want to reach a wide network and have clients that you can turn down because you just have so much business you don't know what to do with yourselves, I would imagine. Close to the mark? Yes? No? Why? Why do you want to do it? But if you're driven to do it for any number of reasons, and success in your business is one of them, and absolutely any one of the scenarios here that you've just heard can be a road to success. If you are not set up within your business to support the extra amount of time that you are now going to have to devote to being on media, whatever that might be, but to now feeding. You may get a morning show where you have a segment. It could be local TV, it could be national TV, but that's a segment you have to prepare for, be ready for, and be fabulous on every single day of the week. For example, somebody has to be minding the house because somehow you've got clients more than you ever had, and if you can't deliver the design, it doesn't mean anything. So be prepared. I think it's great advice you've heard here in terms of the routes to get there, get heard, get seen, get noticed. But you need to remember what it is that you do and that what part of your business you want to promote and what part of you want to present that needs to be duplicated somewhere within your design studio or whatever that might be.
I think one thing I want to kind of add to that is it's also not just enough to say, oh, I want to come and be on the morning show or whatever. You need to create a pitch and you need to create the content. So if it's, you know, the top 10 ways to spruce up your space on a weekend, or top rules for lighting your living room, and you need to have images and graphics that they can display to go along with it. So Hillary's totally right. What you're ending up doing is it takes time to create that content, and you've got to really lob it up for them on a silver platter. It's not like they're going to say, oh, we've come up with this thing for you to do. You know, and even on any show that I feel like I've done, I'm always the one who writes my beat sheet, all the talking points, the design ideas, the tips, the things you're sharing, because as designers, that's what we know. The producer doesn't know why you're hanging the drapes all the way up to the ceiling. So you really have to be as much a director and a producer as you are someone who's really on a show.
Exactly, and we all talk about brand. And within this insanely overcrowded market that we are in, it is very hard to create that niche and create that brand. And why should they listen to you and not to you? What do you have to offer that that person doesn't have to offer? We've all learned the basics of design. We all know the basic rules of design. And then it's the way. It's like that whole saying, it's not what you wear, but how you wear it. That's what you should be working on with exactly what Lily just described, but find a way to bend that rule. Here's how you bend the rule. Here's how I interpret that rule. Here's how I made that edgy. Here's whatever that is to make your niche and start creating a brand that is you, because that's what we need to have in our design world anyway, and that's what will make people look up and go, wow, that's interesting. I haven't seen that before. That's what you're aiming for.
I totally agree. I think, you know, the special sauce idea that we all have like these individual gifts, and I know that's kind of like a drum that people are really beating now about authenticity, but I do think, and especially when you go out and you do your first TV segment, because all of you who want to be on TV can do it if you really want to, you want to make sure you look like yourself. You want to be comfortable. Don't just dress like the host does because you feel like that's what you should be wearing. You know, be yourself, because ultimately what the producer wants is that individual that is you. They want to grab the audience that's sitting out there who's going to see you and think, wow, I kind of look like her. I sort of, you know, feel the same way as she does. So if you don't want to wear high heels, wear boots, wear sneakers. You know, look your best, obviously, but be yourself, because that special sauce is ultimately what's going to shape your TV presence. It's going to create your brand if you ultimately want to do that, and it's going to influence your product design, right?
I think that one of the most important things you said there was authenticity, and I think we all demand that now. And without authenticity, you're not going to have legs. It's not going to carry you through. People smell fake. Fake is so
Right. So
strange.
true.
You smell about
I thought I was
a
the
mile
only
away.
one.
So the moment you start going down that road, you're toast. So be true to yourself, but be really aware, nevertheless, of everything that you just said. You still have to present yourself and look as good as you possibly can.
Absolutely.
And get your message through. Just keep sending that message through and don't waver, because be true unto yourself, as they say. Right?
I agree. Okay, so right now I've got a couple of little sheets here. I can email them to you guys if you want them, but this is kind of going to break down the types of television that there is. This is a really good little sheet here that I made for you guys. What is your special sauce? So all of you sort of think about this. You know, this is your personality, your area of expertise. Oh my gosh, my English teacher is going to be so upset at me. Your perceived weaknesses. I think this is so good.
Own them.
For sure,
We've all failed.
Absolutely.
Miserably.
Absolutely.
Often.
Yeah. I think also there's a reason why some of the most successful YouTube videos are of somebody, you know, riding a bike off a cliff or something. Well, that's a bad example because that's bad. You don't want to watch that.
Dangerous.
That's
seems
terminal. You don't want to do
but
that
when
one.
things don't go right, that's okay. That's what life is. And it would always crack me up when I would be doing makeover TV and the, you know, producer would come in and say, all right, we need to create some drama. I was like, need to create drama? I'm making over a room in 12 hours for $6,000. You don't need to create anything.
Right.
Stuff is going to go wrong. There are going to be train wrecks, and that is just what it is. And you know, you've got to plan for plan B most of the time and be ready for when the disasters happen. But that's just life, and people want to see that. They want to see that you can manage it, you can pivot, and get through it.
And
that's
be
when
vulnerable.
Yes, and I think that's when the personality portion comes in. I will give an example. I was on WGN, and I was doing a live segment. I hate live segments after this one. But we're using a paintbrush that has a stencil attached to it. Now, everything I practiced at home went perfectly well, and I decided to use a new roller when we get to the studio. Wrong move. So when I go, you know, they're coming up live as Mikkel Welchin. I get ready to put the little roller stencil, and the paint just drags, and it just runs down. But in that moment, we had to turn it into a comedy session at that point, because you can't freeze. And I think with that special sauce, that's when you kind of invoke your personality into it, and, you know, you pray it never happens again.
That's a big blooper, I got to say. But then that goes on the blooper reel, right?
Yes, yes,
So that's okay. It's all okay.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, even the most proficient, you know, you didn't fail. Your equipment failed.
The equipment failed. That's right. I'm going to call Home Depot about that.
Yeah.
What are some mistakes you feel like you guys have made in your kind of transition from being a designer to being like a television designer? Have there been any, and what are some things like we can learn about that?
I mean, because I started out in TV and performing before I was a designer, that was probably a problem, because sometimes I didn't know
I would forget, like, oh, you know, I'd get this, a rug, a certain size, this is gonna fit. And then you forget the hearth comes out and you're on TV and you're like, oh, geez. And they roll the rug out and it's sort of like at that moment, you're like, somebody hand me a mat knife. You cut it out around the hearth, slap the rug down and you're done. I think as interior designers, we're problem solvers first, we're good listeners, and then we're designers. And I feel like the same is on TV. You're a problem solver. You got to get in and make it work. So for me, learning about design as I was actually on television was probably the biggest challenge. But trust me, there were plenty of times where I was like, and I meant for it to look exactly like this, and it was not what I thought at all. But it ended up working out and looking good. So, you know, you have those challenges and you just figure it out.
I would kind of say, agreeing with what Hillary talked about, honestly for me, the biggest hiccup when I first got started with picking up design clients and television was the balancing act. Because I could be on set and I get a call from my assistant. I remember once we were hanging a $30,000 chandelier and it fell.
Oh.
Luckily, the guys caught it. Several crystals fell. But my client does not care that I'm on that television set. They want me in the house fixing that problem. And so for me, the biggest hiccup was learning how to balance that team. And also kind of what Hillary said again, you know, learning, you really have to have your key players in place because a lot of times these people hire us because they see us on television. So sometimes they don't want to see your assistant, they want to see you. So it's that balancing act of, you know, being present and balancing television at the same time. So I think that for anybody trying to break into television, really have a firm outline of what your business model is going to look like. It can work, but you really got to have a strong system in place because if not, it's difficult.
I think it's beyond difficult. I think that what happens is that you can find that because, as you say, you end up on television and it's taking, if it works out for you, and it's going to then take a huge amount of your time, but it's also going to create an expectation that you are the designer, you're the only person who can do this design, because that's the perception, and you're quite right, and the clients want to see you there. And the more money they're paying, the more they expect to see you there.
Yeah.
So true.
And you can't be. So I think it's important to do exactly what was just described and to have those people there, but to also make it clear to your private clients, you need to understand, this is how it's going to be. I will be there here, you know, we'll have a meeting once a week, no matter what, or twice a week, or whatever that is that works with your schedule. Have it all worked out and checked. Otherwise, the next thing you know, you'll be getting a reputation as that designer who wasn't there when there was a problem, wasn't there when it needed fixing, didn't arrive, the tiles got put in upside down, and that's going to undo everything that you just did. Absolutely. So there is a very hard-nosed element to this, a hard-nosed part about a business and making sure you get paid, very important part, and a very important part that you've got those people you can lean on, as you described, that you can trust, who will be on top of every single aspect. You have to actually be more meticulous once you have a show than maybe you had to be before you had a show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of like team, what do you guys think are sort of those basic people you need to have in place if you are going to go out and try to make a go of a TV career?
Clone. Just clone me.
Right?
It's tough.
So maybe a design assistant, like a social media intern or something like that?
I think you definitely need to have, of course, a social media person. I think the biggest thing is for your business, you need to make sure you have a good associate designer or project manager that can do exactly what you're talking about, that person would be doing that job no matter what. You know, if you were on TV or if you weren't on TV. And I also think that the promotion of what you do on TV is tricky. I mean, let's face it, if all my clients watch me on Instagram. They know exactly where I am. They know I've been in High Point. I haven't been meeting in Connecticut. I haven't been meeting clients in New Jersey. I've been here in High Point. So that's the other thing that I think you have to manage is the fact that people can watch. They're seeing where you are and what you're doing. And you do have to work, like Hillary said, even extra to make sure you're circling back with them. But I think social media, project manager for sure, and then definitely a designer that can get in and help with the keeping the project moving with sourcing or whatever the stage of the project is.
Can I ask you, because we were talking about the TV design versus sort of the real interior design. If you are doing design projects, let's say they're going to record the projects that they're doing, are there some things that you think about when you're designing a room for television that maybe is slightly different than when you're designing for a real client? What are some of those things?
Well, I mean, I have learned that from the show, and you would have done this too. I mean, when there is the reveal, and you too, 12 hours and $6,000, and they just did a reboot of While You Were Out, so I just had a wind back to that horror of all-nighters and craziness. And what was the question?
Oh, about...
Oh, yes. So I'm already working ahead to figure out the bare bones of this room and what the best angle will be to shoot it from for two reasons. What is going to be the best before and after? So with luck, it's difficult when you take walls down, but you can actually do that wonderful layover of before and after, and then you can talk through what you're actually looking at. So that's what I'm looking for. So if there's a beautiful window and a lovely long wall, and I know that that's where I'm going to put the sectional or whatever the seating area is, and I can put artwork, and then I can have a chandelier here, I've already got that in my head. I don't design for it. I just know that's how I want to look at it, and that's how I want to show it off. Because you want to get as many elements as possible into that one money shot. And then you can go in for, the detail stuff.
I would say for me, I felt like television, I love television design because I feel like it's a little more fluid as opposed to with my high-end clients. I feel like in television design, there's a little more flexibility just in the nature of the design. Some things might not arrive as promised. So the show must go on literally, and we're going to tape in 2 hours, so you need to come up with another option. So I feel like in television design, you have to be a little more definitive just because the timetable. Like time is literally money, and you can't have a production team waiting on you. So I would have to say television is the easier of the two. I just feel like with high-end design, gosh, those people, Jesus.
We know. And the other thing that's nice about television is when you're doing the room, the clients aren't there.
Yes.
So they don't see the stuff that went wrong. That's a good thing.
Right.
Yes.
That's a really good thing.
The show airs.
Yeah. And you've also usually got a design team who is supporting you, where you can say, okay, you get this and you get that because here's our problem. So you've got all the support in there.
Absolutely.
But you can go nuts because the client's not there, and it's still, no matter what, going to look so much better when they walk through the door than it did
Than how it
when they
starts.
left.
And best of all, you don't have to typically do your own budget. There's someone to count all of the receipts. It's a lovely thing.
I love that part. I love that part.
That is really nice.
Yeah, one thing I would say is in designing it for TV, or what's the difference between for a client or for TV. For me, of course, I would always think of where's the before, the best pan before, and where's the best pan after. But one thing that I've found with TV, and this is just because we're talking about knowing your brand, my brand as a designer is very accessible, very approachable. My whole tagline is easy, elegant, everyday style. So I kind of know that's my lane. So when I design for TV, it's very homey. It is the way I would design for a client. It's got all these little pictures and the little details and the things that just really come together to make it feel like someone's home. I think also when somebody comes in, I always want the biggest reaction possible. And sometimes it's the thing that you think is the littlest detail, and all of a sudden they go completely crazy about it. It's not the fact that they have a new fabulous sofa and a dreamy cocktail table. It's that you took their kids' artwork and you framed it in a really cool way, and then they start crying. So for me, knowing my brand and knowing what I offer as a designer helps me get the biggest result and the biggest bang for the buck when I do television. So it feels very personal, but that's just my brand. You know, everybody's got their own secret sauce.
Yeah, I love it. One of the things, the before and after, I will say people are obsessed with before and afters. Obsessed. Even if you're not actually shooting yourself, you know, you're not actually creating video, I would suggest that you take photos from every corner of your room before you start anything. And what I actually do is I put a little tape, I put a T, so I know exactly where my feet were when I took that picture, and I go ahead and I take the after, because that is such a great asset for social media, for your web content, because people love it.
And I'll say one more thing to add to that. If you really want to get the drama of those before and afters, you should really do it at exactly the same time of day, assuming that there isn't a huge lag and you've gone from summer to winter where the light is different. But do it with natural light as much as you can, and then do exactly the same thing again with the curtains drawn and with the lights on and with the glow, and you've got those two vibes going with exactly the same image, and it's sort of a nice, sexy way of showing off what you can do with a space, because we're not always there in the daytime. A lot of us come home in the dark and go to work in the dark, and that's how we're seeing our homes.
Talking about the before and afters, I could not agree with that anymore. It is so true. It's true just for your design business, just to be able to show people what you can do. And so it applies to television, but it also really applies to growing your business without a doubt. Huge, huge, huge.
Agreed. So don't forget to do that. Okay, so what do you think has been the best single piece of advice that you guys have received?
That's a good question.
Wow, you know, that's such a good question. Advice.
Okay, I have one. I had I don't know if you guys are going to agree with this or not. You can tell me that you think it's crazy. I had an English teacher in English.
Oh, you
and
mean
theater.
ever in our lives?
Ever in our lives,
Oh,
yes. Ever in your
okay.
lives.
Yeah, okay.
And he gave me this really great piece of advice, and he would always say to us, wrong and strong, which I love. And it's kind of one of my mantras, like when I feel like things are going wrong, I feel like I'm a little off, just forge ahead, just wrong and strong, you know, because I think in life, those people that are willing to, you know, accept the failures, accept the weaknesses, are the ones that really attain the most success, I think. So wrong and strong is that one for me. What do you guys think?
Well, I guess wrong is strong would mean that, I mean, to me, that goes to being fearless. And I'm one of those people who is kind of stupid. I jump in and then I figure it out later. And that's got me into trouble, but it's also had its rewards. But that's just the way that I work. And so you have to power through. And especially when you know you made the mess all on your own because you went there. So own it. Own your mistakes, absolutely. And also, take the success. It's very easy to become insecure. There's always somebody better. There's always somebody who did, I thought my rug collection was so good, but look at that. Look at that, look at that. There's always somebody coming up with something newer, better, more amazing. And it's easy to get to become insecure. But if you're able to really acknowledge someone else's brilliance and creativity, but also know that you have your own, I think you will have the strength and the power to just keep on going on that road that you've chosen. But that's not advice I received. That's me taking the advice that you were given. And I was just always told, do as you would be done to, and that's it. And I think that goes through everything. And there's nothing more to say than that for me in my life.
The one piece of advice that I will never forget right before breaking out into television was I always felt the need to compare myself to others. And someone gets something and I didn't get it. For instance, I got to the last round of auditions for Queer Eye. And I just knew I was going to be cast for this season, and it didn't happen. And a friend of mine told me, she said, you know, what God has for you, he has for you, and nobody else can take that. And so what it reminded me is that, you know, we are all on this life's journey, and there are things that are predestined, and there's so many things I could talk about that happen over this particular trip to High Point. But the bottom line is, you know, when it's your turn, that opportunity will arise. I think about, I was just in Las Vegas market, and I took my mom with me, and I was so annoyed because she wanted to go into every showroom and get a bag. And you know how it is, like when you're walking to get those bags, you know, the showroom reps, they want to talk to you. And I had just come off of a 60-person tour, exhausted. I'm like, okay, we're going to go in one last store. And she's like, well, we got to get a bag for your grandmother, your aunt. And I'm just like, okay, this is it. So we walk into this one showroom, and I look up, and there's a piece of artwork. And I said, you know, honestly, I don't like that medallion on that artwork. I don't know why they did that. And this lady stops me, and she says, what did you just say about that piece of artwork? And I was just like, oh, shoot. I'm like, well, I like it, but I don't like that piece that's in front of it. And she says, well, I'm the vice president of Yosemite Home Collection. We've been looking to partner with the designer. I would like to talk to you and have you walk through the showroom and see what else we can talk about. And that developed into my new collection, which comes out in this January 2020 market.
Yay!
Thank you. But I say that to say that what's meant for you is it's gonna align itself, and it's gonna happen. And I have been comparing myself to several other people who have been getting all types of licensing deals, but it wasn't my time. But when it's your time, you'll get it.
Yes, the universe generally does deliver if you're open to it.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
One of my favorite things, it's not really advice, but it's a quote, and it rings so true to me, and it is, what is the one thing you would do if you knew you could not fail?
Ooh.
What is the one thing you would do if
right.
you knew you could not fail? And I think what it does is it speaks to fearlessness, taking chances, putting yourself out there. And I think for all of us, we have to be our own best PR people. And if we're not doing it, who's gonna do it? So you really need to sit back and think, what's the worst thing that could happen? Let me take some chances. Let me put myself out there and just think, what is the one thing you would do if you knew you could not fail? And I'm a big goal setter. I love to write down goals. Year 1, year 2, 6 months.
Vision boards. I'm a vision board.
Yes, I love setting those goals, and I think once you can start chipping away at it and looking at what are the actual things you can do, I have another mantra, 3 things a week. 3 things a week. So if you just decide to do 3 things a week to reach your goal, oh my gosh, you're gonna get there so fast. So I love what's the one thing you would do if you knew you could not fail?
I think it's also important, really going back to what you were saying, which is you're always comparing yourself to someone else, which means that you're always really, if you do that, which is what I was talking about, you know, their rugs are so much better, their thing is so much better. It's very easy to beat yourself down. And if you are really able to actually say, what did I achieve? You know, even if you're not writing down the goals or have a vision board or whatever that is, if you sit back, whether it's the beginning of a new year, it's the end of the year, and sit back and look at what you've achieved in your personal life as well as in your professional life, you'd be amazed, actually, at what you have achieved. And that should make you feel really strong and really good and know that you can really do anything if you have the right mindset. And I really believe this. Trust in the universe.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. There was another piece of advice that, Mikkel, you got, which I thought was so good, is make sure that you solve a problem for people, right?
Yes.
It's not enough to just want to do this because you want to make money.
Make it pretty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of identify what are those problems that people have. And by you providing the solution, you're going to get such a great following because people want solutions.
Right.
Right? Agreed.
Cool.
Yeah, I think
All right.
we're all set. You guys, thank you
Great.
so much
Thank
for
you.
being
Thank you.
here.
Thank you.
Yes, have a wonderful market. We'll see you soon.
We'll see you on TV.
Yes.